Stephanie, welcome to Beginner's Mind. It's good to see you and very glad to have you here. Before we start, three things I genuinely appreciate about your work, which I found while preparing for this conversation. Um, the first one is you manage, and this is really amazing, you manage to bridge rigorous academic economic thinking into real world decision-making situations. The second one is that you treat negotiation as a leadership capability and not just a theoretical exercise, especially when it comes to game theory. It's very tempting to just stay in the academic area. You really bring it into the real world. And the third one is that what I especially like is that you help focusing people on making better decisions, creating better win-win collaborations, and not just winning arguments. It's really a pleasure to have you here today.
Hello, everyone. Hello, Christian. Thank you for having me here. So, yeah, where do we start?
Yeah,
Um,
let's start with the first question, I would say. Um, when people hear the word negotiation today, I think they often associate with the word tactics, power, winning, submission, or losing. When you hear the word negotiation today, what does it actually mean for you?
so yes, you are absolutely right. Negotiation is often understood as something, that happens at the negotiation table. And so sometimes people approach me and say, "Oh, can you help me? I have a negotiation tomorrow." Oh, no, how can you? The negotiation is not just happening at the deal table, right? It is everything that happens before, months before, when you get to know each other. So I see a negotiation as a much broader thing. So why is that? Because we are in a world with interactions, right? Everything you do is you always get decisions by others, and they affect you and the outcome you get. And so actually, when you start working together and when you start having meetings and discussing what you want to do together, this is already part of the negotiation, because you build a relationship and you get to know each other and you think about the project you're going to do together. So the negotiation starts much before the day where you really meet at the table. And so when you look at this from this broader perspective, there is a lot you can do to improve your position.
That's a very good starting point. I also know that when people look into this conversation, today they have always little time and almost no time. And when we think about the typical CEO or academics with limited time, if someone only stays for 5 minutes today, what would they miss by not returning for the full conversation?
Christian, are you telling me that some people will leave the meeting after 5 minutes? No, I can't imagine people are going to do that. But what they miss if they do that is clearly we will take a lot of, yeah, a lot of, well, maybe learnings they can apply immediately and situations then they might know from their lives as well. Hopefully, it's helpful for them. But maybe if there are people who want to leave after 5 minutes, something I still can't believe is maybe that just let's just give them a learning, okay? So something they can take away if they leave in a few minutes. So one of the most important learnings when it comes to negotiations and decisions in intact settings, right? When you work with people, is now this is a trick that comes for free. Start with giving something. So build on reciprocity. Start with giving something, and when you do that in a negotiation or in decision-making problems with your teams, whatever the situation is, then very often people come back and give you something in return. And this is often the start of a good relationship, and also the beginning of a new, let's say, good negotiation outcome.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Um, I had chosen a title where where I thought, oh my God, should I really do that? Is it not too offensive? It was about smart people making bad decisions. And you have worked most likely with many intelligent people. When did you first notice that poor decision making is really a problem of intelligence?
No, I wouldn't say it's a problem. So first of all, I started observing that a lot of clever people do a lot of good decisions. Okay, so decision making is not a problem per se. And I realized that those people who make good decisions and are successful in negotiations, they often have the same kind of thinking I have with my game theory background. And so what I then learned is that nevertheless they can, so to say, benefit from using a kind of structure that gives them more clarity to what they are doing and maybe make even better decisions. So I'm not saying they are not good in decision making at all, but I'm saying that there is still room for improvement quite often because making good decisions requires some preparation and time, and some people just forget about that or don't spend enough time on the preparation for that.
Why do you think is that people don't spend enough time preparing for negotiations?
Why people don't spend enough time for preparing. You know, this is life because everyone's so busy with the daily tasks they have. I completely understand. But if there's something that's really important, then think about spending more time or maybe asking someone who has time who can help you in thinking the decision through.
How much, what is there a rule? What's the ideal preparation time for a negotiation?
What's the ideal preparation time? Well, you can prepare as long as you want to. It's always a matter of how much would you like to invest, and what is the outcome. So because at one point you might find that getting more information, you know, for making a decision doesn't help you so much. And then it very much depends on the negotiation problem, I would say. But of course, decisions and negotiations will never happen with 100% of information. So people usually make decisions when they have something like 70% of the information. But again, this requires that you have an idea of what you know and of what you don't, right? Because coming to the conclusion that I know already enough to make a good decision also implies somehow to know what you don't know.
When we look back at your early academic years, what initially drew you to economics and game theory?
So my background is indeed, I'm an economist. I studied economics at university, but I must say I had no idea what to do after school, so it was just coincidence. So I started studying economics, and I found out that it's a pretty good thing to do because economics is all about how people make decisions individually or the whole economy, and how they respond to incentives. And now we're looking at this. Game theory is part of this decision making, right? Game theory is actually the part where you look at strategic decisions, where we have only a few people and the decisions of others at, let's say, impact your situation. So you have room for strategic decisions as compared to decisions that you make, but they have no, let's say, impact on others. For example, if I buy an apple, it doesn't have an impact on others, right? It's a decision I make, and this is what is covered by economics, consumer behavior. So, right, everyone knows this who studied economics or business. But game theory is a bit different. And I would say game theory is very good to apply in business situations because this kind of thinking, what do other people do and how can I respond to that? And how can I base my optimal decision on that? This is something you do every day in business.
Why game theory? Why did what caught your attention?
So game theory is about making optimal decisions, and it's only part of what I'm passionate about, right? Because game theory is you analyze a situation, you think about what are the motives of others, so you put yourself into the shoes of others, try to figure out what's going on with them, and then based on that, you develop your own optimal decision. But sometimes you find out that the situation or the outcome you get is not optimal for you. And so the thing is, how can you change that? How can you change the game to your advantage so that you are in a stronger position? And so in game theory, you think about that from a more technical point of view, but in real life, when you start thinking about what can be changed so that you get a better outcome, you can be so creative in changing the rules of the game to get more in the end.
How has this changed how you think about decision and influence?
So for me, influence is something you can always influence people. And by the way, when I'm saying influencing, I do not mean manipulating in a bad way. What I mean by influencing is that you talk to people to create value, to get an outcome where both can benefit, right? So this is more what I mean when I say influencing. I'm not, not not on behalf of others so that you get more, but you can, when you work together in business, you can actually create a situation where both can get more. But that requires that you talk about what you want to achieve, and you set the rules and variables right. And this is what I mean by influencing.
There is an interesting point that came up in my mind. Theory is one thing, and then I often hear people saying, yes, yes, in theory, I mean, everything works, but reality is completely different. Was there a moment in your career where you said, theory didn't work in reality?
I, I hear this quite often from students. They say, oh, this is just theory. It's so simple. It's very different to what we experience in real life. Well, yeah, actually, it's not, okay? So, but there is a difference, of course. Theory is a simplification of the reality. If you wouldn't do that, it's how can you analyze the reality? It's so complex, so difficult. So you need to simplify the reality. You end up with theory, but then, of course, it's not 100% what you can expect in reality because of the simplification process, which is so important, because otherwise it's difficult to understand mechanisms and how people respond to incentives. So I wouldn't say that theory fails. I would say that theory answers the question you have. So you have to ask the right question, apply the right theory, and see how you can apply this learning to the real world.
You work currently not only in one field, you manage to switch from one to the other. You are in academia. You work as an executive coach, and I found your profile, I think, at Bio International last year. So you also work with Biopharma Alliances, which is every single one a distinct field on their own. And switching, I think, is not very trivial to go from one context to the other. What helps you navigate these transitions?
Yeah, you're right. So the transition from academia to business was something that was quite challenging for me in the beginning. So I started working together with Hamian Borgert. He's now working for Roche, and we are preparing, by the way, our negotiation workshop for the Bio International Convention this year in San Diego.
Mhm.
And so when we started working together, it was so difficult because I said it's bargaining, and he said no, it's negotiation. And I said, they are opponents. And he said, no, how can you say that? They are partners. So that was a difficult start. But finally, we managed to work together. But the rest is just, for me, it's the same thing. So I try to take the findings from academia and try to translate them so that it's understandable and applicable to people in business. So trying to speak their language. You can do this in different fields, and it's good to have let's say, sound understanding of how the pharma and life science biotech industry works to apply it there. But nevertheless, you can basically apply it to every industry. So maybe, so maybe one thing is that, um, yeah, well, so how can I say that? when you try to give advice to someone about negotiation, like it's the big consultancy companies, right? They give you slides, they give you the solution, and they say you have to do this, have to do that, and then the next step would be for the companies and for the people to apply this, right? And this is a lot of work to do. And this last step, how do I apply the learnings and the advice I got for myself or for my company? This is something the coaching abilities are quite helpful, because with coaching you can help people to develop their own way to employ what they just learned.
That's good. That's a great thing. We talked about differences. Now let's look at it from a different angle. Do you observe when it comes to decision making? Do you observe patterns that are similar in every different field?
Yeah, sure. We are just humans, right? So everything we do is very often based on what we did in the past. When we talk about decision making, I frequently talk to leaders, and leaders very often, they want advice or help thinking
Mm.
decisions through, but they say on the other hand side, they defend themselves, right? They say it's kind of narcissistic defense. What I did in the past was always great, and so they start to downplay and exaggerate on the other hand side, so that they can defend themselves and their
Mm.
decisions they made in the past. But if you want to improve, you have to think about other things as well and other options as well. So getting people to broaden their mind for other options, this is something that is challenging sometimes. So we are just humans, everyone. So that's the point.
Why, in your opinion, why is this so hard for humans to look at yourself and their own flaws and acknowledge them?
um, well, I think this is it saves our life and it saves our time to have these shortcuts in decision
Mhm.
making. So when I think it's dark, I switch on the light and I don't have to think about it. So we all have those shortcuts and they help us a lot. So when I go shopping, I'll only look at certain brands, right? So I don't have to look at everything and compare everything. It makes my life easier. But that means in business that sometimes you miss opportunities. And of course, this is the reason why it's so, yeah, it's always good to talk to people, to get some influence from outside and to have maybe a group of people making decisions instead of doing this always on your own.
That's a good point. What I found interesting, we come back later to this topic. What I found interesting in your Vita is something unexpected, ballroom dancing. Is this, did I get this wrong? You had at the university, you were a successful ballroom dancer.
Oh, very successful. Thank you for that. So, well, I did this in the past, so that's true. Well, it came up because I had a very nice presentation in Denver last
Mhm.
year with the Association of Strategic Alliance Management. And the founder, Robert Porter Lynch, he once had a presentation and he included ballroom dancing. And finally, I thought let's include this in my presentation as
Mhm.
well. So this is just a side story, but I liked it so much. And Robert last year asked me if we can dance on stage prior to his presentation. So this was one of my highlights last year, to dance with Robert. All right, but okay, so just putting away this side story. So what is so interesting about ballroom dancing? It's a very small collaboration, isn't it? It's about two people who have let's say a common goal. They want to move two bodies across the floor, which is not so easy. So everyone listening to us now knows that this is not easy.
Mhm.
Vienna's waltz. So two bodies, and you have the music, and you want to move together. And so, why does it work, and what can you learn from ballroom dancing? It's ballroom dancing is based on certain rules, and what I find so fascinating about that is that you communicate all the time with your body. So, as a woman, so the man leads, right? And the women nevertheless can lead somehow with the body. If I, for example, can see that there is no space and we have to make a turn or something, I can communicate as well. But you don't see this from the outside. So this kind of communication all the time, spending, you know, putting all your yes, thinking about the partner. What do I have to do to make this work in the end? And this is a constant task. You have to do this all the time until the dance finishes. This is something that is really interesting.
How successful have you been?
How successful? Oh,
Mhm.
that's to me quite successful, because my biggest success was to be able to dance without walking steps, if you know what
Mhm.
I mean. So,
Mhm.
because dancing is more than just doing the steps. Well, in Germany, it's called S-Klasse, and we participated in national competitions and so.
Wow.
But nevertheless, I think what I gained from this was this idea that collaboration is something good if you communicate well and if you do the right thing. And by the way, may I add that, because I just said that one tip for those guys who want to leave early. So I hope that everyone's still here. But so the one tip I said, that start by giving something. And when you look at good ballroom dancers, how they start dancing, how they start the dance is they invite each other. So they give something.
Mhm.
They invite each other to dance together. And this is what I mean by giving, because then you can easily, take this up and then you start dancing.
So you were not, I mean, we are in Vienna, in the city of ballrooms, especially in January and February. So it was not just a course over the weekend to go to a ball. You dedicated a lot of time to improving the art and mastering it to a level that brought you to national competitions in Germany.
Yes, absolutely. But nevertheless, maybe one day I will be dancing in the Hofburg or somewhere as well. I had a very nice presentation last year
Mm.
in Vienna in the Hofburg, but no, I don't think oh, maybe once a competition in Vienna. I'm not sure, but hopefully in the future, one day.
When we look at ballroom dancing, you mentioned that having manners, inviting someone to a dance, is something that people learn when they train for ballroom dancing. Is this helpful for negotiations as well, in your opinion?
So, if you analyze this further, okay, I think there are a lot of details that can be helpful. So, as an example, if the man wants to move the couple and the lady backwards, you can't just push her backwards, can you? Because she will resist and move forwards and lean against you.
Mm.
And so, translating this into business negotiations means that if you want someone to do something, don't push him into this direction, but leave room for this other guy to find the solution by themselves. So that well, everyone has to develop the solution somehow from their point of view, right? So I think this is very interesting. So once again, when I'm saying influencing, I don't mean that you have to push someone into an unfair direction where you gain while the other one loses. It's more that how can you gain together? How can you build something together? This is my perspective. And also, this is what you do in ballroom dancing.
That's an interesting angle. Maybe we stay a little bit with that, especially when you think about dancing, men and women. As a man, you have power naturally. I mean, not the social power, but strength. And it's so easy to push a woman at the end of the day. So when you have these differences between skill, an experienced man dancing for years and an inexperienced woman, um, in principle, it's easy. You hold her in your arms and then you just give a little push and she goes in the right direction. Why is this not a good idea?
Yeah, because you get the opposite of what you want. If you push someone, you give it a try this
Mm.
evening with the friends you met or your wife or something. Just push her. She will lean against, right? She won't do that because otherwise she would just fall. So if you want to move backwards, you have to prepare and put your weight forward in order to be able to step backwards. So it needs a kind of preparation as well. And so taking this into account when you prepare for negotiations, it means that everyone needs the time to prepare the step they're going to make.
Have you ever thought about why this does not come natural to humans? To rather guide than push.
To rather guide than push. Maybe this is a cultural thing as well. Some cultures are more straightforward, others are more like, well, find out by yourself. I'm just talking, I'm always saying yes, but you have to find out if I mean yes or if I don't. So this is something cultural as well, I would say. So we Germans are relatively straightforward, Americans are inviting, so it's difficult, but nevertheless, so apart from these stereotypes, I would say it's always easier to say, I like that, I want to have that, than, thinking about how can I get the other person to do what I like. It's much more complicated. It requires more thinking.
Yeah, it's a lot of, I think, work going in martial arts in this direction, when to push, when to pull, when to guide, when not to do it. It's really complicated. It's not easy. It's not easy to find the right pacing. Do you have, from your experience from academia to negotiations in boardrooms, do you have one tip to make it easier to find the right pacing with the other person?
Um, so another tip that is really important but sounds so simple. Why not just listen more to people? Ask questions and listen. So very often meetings are so that people want to talk. They talk a lot, and then after the meeting, they think, "Oh, I did very well in the meeting, good achievements." But the other side, they had no chance to catch up and to bring in their arguments, and then of course you lose them. But if you want to do something together, make sure that they have the chance to express their needs and their objectives as well. So ask questions and wait, observe and listen. Active listening is something I know everyone says that, right? But it in the end, it is so helpful to be successful.
That's an interesting angle when I think it through. And let's come from the contrarian Viennese perspective. I call it Sudan, Yaman. It's, I think, a Viennese tradition to always find the negative. When people listen more, especially in leadership roles, and are quiet and not performative, don't they risk to be seen as weak pushovers that have no say in the room?
I'm just still thinking about your Yaman complaining about
Yeah,
things.
yeah,
What
yeah.
you said before we come to the rest of your question. Um, So why not let people? So if someone has the immediate need to complain, to express a
Mhm.
kind of feeling, why not let them do that? Because if if they are busy in their mind, I don't want that because of this, and I'm complaining about that. So they can't take the next step. But if they're able to express, I don't feel comfortable with this solution or this idea because of this, then you can say you can at least accept that this feeling or this problem is there, and if you accept that, then the other guy is able to do the next step. If you always say no, it's not a problem per se, and you don't listen, then the people will always be busy in their mind with this problem. Now the second part of your question was what again? That people.
Especially when you think about men. I mean, men should perform. Look at actors, for example, they're paid to perform, to play a role. And when you look at leadership, male leadership, it's about performative. You need to take the lead, you need to be strong, you need to have the last word, you need to talk. Um, when they step back and start listening and asking more questions and being quiet, I can imagine that. many male leaders fear that they are seen as weak pushovers, not standing their ground, and risk losing their status in the group. Is that a real fear, or is this something artificial way of say it's not really important in negotiations?
That's a good point. Do you imply that people perceive people perceive people as weak if they do not dominate the meeting? Is this what you're saying? I'm not so sure about that because it's much more than just, talking all the time.
Mhm.
Um, it's about body language and other signals you give. It's about a good structure, preparing the meeting. It's about a good follow-up. I don't think that just talking all the time makes you the hero of the meeting or being perceived as someone who's strong and a good leader. Is it like I would like to hear more about that from others. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I think there are many ways how you can express that you know what you're doing and you are able to make good decisions. What do you think?
I have no finished opinion on that. I think it's a very complicated question at the end of the day to find the right balance between stepping back and letting other people do the job of thinking about Jeff Bezos. There is this famous story about him that he seems to be the last to speak in a meeting. And I read on the internet that some attribute it in this way that they say he asks first the lowest in the rank to express their thoughts, and then the next one, the next one, the next one, and he as a leader speaks last. So to give him a chance to hear all the opinions. And then I think to other schools, especially when it comes to conflict and where negotiations already went wrong in the past and we start fighting as humans, they say, no, you need to step forward. You need to take the lead in the room and make it clear that what you say counts and not the other person. I think this is finding the right balance and finding the right pace and finding the right pattern for the right situation is, in my opinion, not an easy task in leadership.
Yeah, exactly. So, I totally agree. I would say it's not only about, being dominant in a meeting, but setting the tone can be, structuring the meeting and asking the right question at the right time. So in the end, maybe it's more like you have to find your authentic way to how to negotiate, how to deal with people, which might be more important than just being the dominant male person in the room. And being authentic, I think, is very important because it helps you to be clear. It helps you to be a trustworthy person. It helps you to do not too much thinking about, you just have to think about yourself and the other person or the other organization, but you don't have to do all those, am I liked or not? How do people think, perceive my behavior? So you can just forget about that. Try to be the person you want to be. So as an example, if you want to be someone who people can trust, behave accordingly, right? Be transparent, be fair, and then trust is just a consequence of your behavior. So I think finding an authentic way is very important.
I think this is, for me, this is the most interesting part in negotiations and the application from theory into reality. What I like it learned it in my coaching education, this was this conflict scale by, I think it was Glasl, this 9-stage scale where say the first three, we are in a nice world together, we work together, we are collaborative, everything's fine, we like each other. In that situation, it's always easy to listen and to negotiate. Good relationship, good collaboration, and nobody offends the other. And then Glasl says you have 4 to 6, where it already starts going sideways, where insults happen. And when I think about the reality, when someone is insulted in a meeting, maybe subconsciously, maybe consciously, there is a reaction in the body. It's not that an insult lands without a reaction. Some retreat and try to flee and say, okay, I want to get out of here. Some start to fight. And in this situation, it becomes interesting because then we are in reality, what happens between people, not only in theory. And the question then is, when should, that I ponder, and I didn't find a really good answer for that, when should you let the reaction run? and dominate or flee? And when should you really try to calm down and say, okay, yeah, this is not the right reaction to move forward? Did you find a solution for these questions, how to handle negotiations when they start going sideways, when they start going into conflict territory, open hostilities, fighting scenarios?
Um, so we are, everyone actually has emotions and feelings and a personal side, and then we negotiate about a deal. So there are always these two things, and you can, if you are a perfect person, you could maybe separate the feelings from the thing you're going to negotiate. But it's difficult, I agree. So this is not always possible. But I mean, if it's important, there are several, let's say, steps you can take to de-escalate the situation. You could, for example, say, let's have a break and we negotiate later. We continue tomorrow, or we just have to clarify a point internally, and we are happy to continue this conversation tomorrow, because everyone has the chance to calm down, and maybe you can just talk to this other guy and ask, so are you okay? You just listen and see, observe and accept what this people is feeling, and what happened there, which is quite helpful, I would say, very often. But yeah, so how can you separate your own feelings and emotions from the thing you're dealing with? And that's not always easy, is it? Yeah, I mean, you can work on yourself. Everyone has weaknesses, and probably many of you know their weaknesses already. Knowing that is always the first step, and if you know it, you can maybe ask a coach or someone to reflect, and together with you what you can do about that, to be in a better position. Of course you can't change the other people, but you can change yourself, and make sure that in the next negotiation you are not this person who ruins the deal just because of your emotions.
Bringing it back to where we started, ballroom dancing, I think this is really a good exercise to start understanding how people move and your own reactions in combination with another person, like dancing. I remember my dancing class, it can be quite frustrating when I dance with a woman and she moves in a different direction and as you do, and then also the other way around. But I think this is a good starting point to start dancing and understand how people react and move and understand their own reactions.
Yeah, absolutely. There is always a reason why someone drops the weight, or someone, gives signals, don't move into this direction, or I can't go that far. So there's always a reason, and listening to that makes the overall performance better in the end.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And as you said at the beginning, that people are people, and you also have the same dynamics then in a negotiation on a verbal level. That happens also in dancing. Let's move on to the next point. When I look at your Vita, European women on boards. What are you doing there?
So European Women on Board is a very nice network. I joined it a few years ago, and now I have an active role, so to say, in the partnering committee, and I'm leading the DACH chapter as well, the DACH chapter, Germany, Switzerland, Austria. So it's a network to bring more women into decision-making positions. But that is not the reason why I joined this network and why I'm still with them. It's just a nice network. It's a nice gathering of women and also men.
Mhm.
By the way, we love men, so everyone can join this as well. It's not exclusive for women. Yeah, but it's just a nice network because very, very open. You can share your ideas, and you can talk to other people, and we all support each other. This is why I like European Women on Board so much. This is one of the networks I'm in, and I must say, I still feel very happy about joining EVOP, because they accepted me as an academic. So I still have this background. A lot of people think she's just a university professor, so
Really?
what can you do with her in the real world? And this is a stamp you have as an academic your whole life. But people sometimes forget that there must be something positive related to this academic background. And EWOP, they just accepted me as I am, and they somehow I was able to leverage my skills in this network very well. So highly appreciated. So I can only, recommend networks and gathering of people where you find like-minded people and you can exchange ideas. That it's so helpful, and it's just a nice thing to do.
That's great. What is the most profound insights that you gained from participating in this network?
Um, well, it's so the core idea is to bring more women in decision-making positions, and I can see that it's not so easy in the DACH region to. So if you look at the female participation in boards and non-executive board positions, could be higher, right? We are 50% females in Germany, for example, but not in boards and not in decision-making positions. So why not? So my idea would be that because we had much more males in the past, so why not have more females in the future, something like 70%? So no, just kidding. I'm happy with 50%, don't worry. But no, it's just like, I can see that other people, other women have these problems as well. But I don't want to be unfair. It might not be a problem because of the gender or something. It's maybe due to other reasons, maybe because of skill or something else.
Is this still a problem? Gender on board level in the DACH region? Is this still a topic that we need to talk about?
I think we need to talk about it because we are not at 50% yet. Yeah, don't take it too serious. All I want to say is, so I'm not fighting for women, right? I'm fighting for try to find someone who can really help you. And that means it doesn't have to be the guy next door you have been talking to many years. You have been doing business for the past 20 years. Try to find someone who can really help you. And it would be coincidence if it was the guy next door, right? So this is what I want to say. Look for talents. Look for people with the skills you need and who can bring your organization forward. If it's the guy next door, it's fine. But sometimes maybe it's a woman. Sometimes it's a black guy. So try to embrace diversity because it can help you. If you don't embrace it, it doesn't help. And of course, the easiest way is to just ask the guy next door because he has the same, preferences and the same background, so it's easy to talk to each other. But also the learnings and the let's say the progress you can have together is then probably smaller than when you bring a new influence from somewhere else.
Yeah, that's true. Human development is important and often underrated. Let's switch gears and step into theory, game theory, and bring it from concept into the reality. What's game theory?
So game theory is the science of strategic decision making. So I mentioned earlier that strategic stands for interactions. When someone else has to decide something and it has an impact on you. And looking at business, this is everywhere the case. It's not only in business, in private life as well. When you live at home with your family, who's going to make the coffee in the morning, right? It's an interactive decision making problem. Yeah, so game theory sounds quite mathematical. So whenever someone mentions game theory, people think that, oh no, it's about derivatives and it's math. It is, I can tell you. But no worries, if you try to apply it, it's much more like you apply a structure or concept that helps you. It should help you. Everything you do, it's not about torturing people with derivatives. It's more like it helps you to get structure and clarity on the decision you want to make.
Why is structure so important?
Now you're talking to someone who loves structure. I love structure because I think it makes life much easier. I wouldn't be able to decide if there are too many influences, and you have to find out how important is this, how important. So, oh, way too complicated. I can decide to buy an apple or a pear or something. That's easy. So I would like to break a decision down to something like this. And then I can think about, so what is missing? If I look at reality, what is missing? What can I bring into this simple decision to make it more realistic? So this is my way to approach decision making. And the nice thing about it is that the structure gives you a kind of recipe how to think about your decision-making problem. So on the one hand side, it's easy to follow that structure. On the other hand side, you won't miss opportunities. Nobody wants to miss opportunities.
I mean, I can imagine when leaders listen to this episode, female, male, and they already run a successful company and had a career, are in their 50s or 60s or 40s, would say, why should I think about my decision making? It works. What reason would you give them to still look at improving how they make decisions? Why does that matter to them?
Why does it matter? Oh, if you're okay with what you're doing, I don't want to force you to apply game theory, but it maybe there's a decision where you really want to do well and you really want to think about that. So why not get some insights or some reflections from the outside? Well, we touched on this point earlier, right? We are all human, so we are all somehow biased. We have the shortcuts in our thinking and decision making. And sometimes it's good to think about options you would never look at. And maybe strategic moves or influencing tactics you would never consider. So it's helpful to have someone guide you through this. And well, if it doesn't work out, you don't have to, right? You can still do what you ever did in the past, but maybe there's something in for you using those new techniques as well.
Yeah, that's a good angle. That's a good angle. When you think about your conversations with your students and your clients, what's the biggest misconception they have about game theory?
Yeah, this is what I mentioned earlier. It's math, it's theory, it's you can't use it in business. It's how can people apply it? So this is why I don't come from game theory, but I look at the business
Mhm.
decision-making problem or the negotiation that people would like to think through. And then I just, I'm applying this kind of structure. And sometimes I don't even mention game theory. It's not important that they understand game theory. It's not important that they, are able to derive the Nash equilibrium or something. No, it's important for them to improve their decision making. So going into the head of the client and really help them. This is my approach. And then it should be okay. Of course, for students, I mean, for students, it's not always easy because I'm teaching at university. I have been teaching at universities where you can only study business, not economics. And sometimes those models where we simplify everything and we make a lot of assumptions, that's sometimes a bit spooky for them. I totally understand because you have to somehow get used to this kind of thinking. But knowing this, I don't want others to understand game theory, but I want others to, well, let's say, benefit from that.
That's good. That's a good angle. When I think about game theory, the have you seen the movie A Beautiful Mind? With
Oh, and all my students know it as well.
yeah, really.
Yes.
Is it a big thing at the university as well?
Well, I tend to show this movie scene where John Nash is in a bar and he faces a decision-making problem. So can we assume that everyone in this podcast knows A Beautiful Mind? It's about the life of John Nash, and John Nash actually was played a crucial role in bringing game theory forward. This is why the most important concept is called Nash equilibrium after
Mhm.
John Nash.
What is this equilibrium?
Well, the Nash equilibrium is just a situation where nobody can improve if the incentives are as they are and if the other party made their optimal decision. So you can't do better than that. So it's kind of stable, let's say a stable combination of best choices. So you can only improve if something else changes, something exogenous to this model, so to say, something like the payoffs change, or if maybe the other player has another option or whatsoever. But if the game is as it is with the options and everything the players have, and you make your optimal choice, you end in an equilibrium. Which, by the way, doesn't mean it's a good outcome. So this is different, right? It's just your optimal choice. You can't do better than that.
You mentioned the bar scene in Beautiful Mind. I like this scene because um, it makes theory tangible, and it demonstrates in a real life situation how negotiations work and how this equilibrium can play out. I don't know if it's authentic, if this really happened in that way in real life, but they show it with dating. So first, I think it's the first part of the scene is four men, five women, and they all want to date the same women. And John Nash explains then why it doesn't work out well for all of them. Um, what do you think about these examples that use dating to um, as an example for the Nash equilibrium and for game theory? How do you see putting these negotiation strategies in such pictures from the academic point of view?
We could talk very long about this scene. So first thing I would like to mention before I answer your question is I think there's something wrong in this movie. And so everyone who
Really?
wants to see the movie,
Mm,
look at this scene and count the men and the women. I think there's something wrong in the reasoning. But nevertheless, the core idea is that so there is a very nice blonde woman, right? And a few
mm.
guys, and everyone would like to have a date with her. So if you only think about yourself, you would just go and ask her, "Can I have a date with you?" And if she says no, you can go to her one of her friends and ask her, and then maybe get a date with one of the friends, which is the second best, but still you have a date. But so this is just thinking about yourself.
Mm,
But Nash, or it's basically it's Russell Crowe in this movie.
mm.
He plays the role of John Nash. He proposes a different procedure. He says we guys, we could collaborate in the sense that we could all ask the friends of the blonde lady because um, if we ask the blonde first, we all compete against each other and we block our way. This is what he says. But if we go for her friends, we all will get a date, right? So we have a higher probability of being successful, even if it's just second best. I'm not sure if they are second best, but watch the movie. All right, and so this is his kind of reasoning. And the core idea is that if you collaborate, the outcome for everyone, if you just put them together, okay, will be higher as compared to everyone only thinks about themselves and do what is best for them. Um, so yeah, and this is what you can do in negotiations as well. Look at the outcome where both parties or all parties involved into this negotiation can benefit and think about how to distribute the value later.
You mentioned earlier there's something wrong with the reasoning. Now I'm curious, what's wrong with the reasoning in this scene?
I think I think if I remember correctly, there are four guys and four ladies. So it's the blonde women and three girls,
Mm, mm.
her friends, and four guys. But the reasoning by John Nash, so please correct me if I'm wrong. If anyone knows about this scene, let's just have a look. And four guys and four ladies, but if the four guys ask the friends, so someone from them has to ask the blonde lady, right? So otherwise it doesn't work out. So I think it's just a tiny mistake in this movie.
I have to watch it. I can't remember exactly
Please,
the
please
numbers.
do
Yeah,
so.
yeah. I
And give
always
me a call. Everyone who does not agree, please give me a
uh,
call. Find me on LinkedIn and, let
no,
me
no.
know.
This is might be, but I think I just closed it with there must be five women and four men. So otherwise, this must doesn't make sense. But
Exactly.
there's another angle that I found quite interesting. One is the collaboration approach that's explained with that scene, and then I think it's this scene or the next one. It's also in the bar with the blonde lady, where she stands alone at the bar, and John Nash approaches her. And you talked about outcomes. So at the end of the day, in this bar, I mean, the outcome is clear. It's dating and getting to the end result of dating, which I think every adult person knows what that might be. And so John Nash walks over to her. She's standing at the bar alone, and he says to her, "Look, I mean, we want the same thing at the end of the day. Why don't we spare us the time um, and just get to business and stop all the things in between? Wouldn't that be much easier for both of us?" And she looks at him and says, "This is cute," and then slaps him in the face and runs out of the bar. Obviously, the negotiation didn't really go well, and it made me think because I think when we look at especially biopharma negotiations between investors and scientists and entrepreneurs, closing rounds, IPOs, there is always, I think, this is a human notion that comes up if say, okay, when the outcome is already clear that we both want the same thing and we also have clarity that we are going in the right direction, why does it still not make sense to cut the process short and go from the first interaction right to the end result? Have you ever spent time in academia thinking about why humans need this entire process to come to the conclusion, which might be sometimes already clear at the beginning?
Oh, Christian, why are you asking? You saw the movie, right? So you know already that it's not so easy. I think humans are, everyone comes from their perspective and everything is subjective. There is no objective truth. Even if you want to
Mhm.
collaborate and do something together, it has to be defined. It doesn't fall from heaven. And this is a big part of my work to think about what do we want to achieve together. This is not trivial at all. So this some very examples thinking about going for lunch together and to say, okay, let's have sushi.
Mm.
And I have in mind restaurant A, and you want to go to restaurant B. It's not so easy. It's still sushi, maybe, but I might be happy with A, and you are only happy with. So whatever, it's so complicated. So I think this whole process is needed. First, looking at the movie, because for John Nash, maybe only the outcome, the evening, the 2 hours they spend together is important. But for the lady, the 2 hours and the conversation before is important. So it's not the same thing. Can you see that?
Mm.
It's
Mm.
two different things. It's just 2 hours spending in the bedroom, and it's 2 hours in the bedroom and more than that. So I can't believe I'm talking about things like that in the podcast, but okay. So you have to be sure that you're talking about the same thing, and how to get there is also not trivial, and how to implement the steps to get there. And there are so many variables and details that need to be discussed. So I don't know, if you create a joint venture together, where's the headquarter, who has the say, which position, how much, so there are so many details that need to be defined. So when, of course, you have to talk about that. And another very nice side effect is that while doing that, you build a relationship and you build trust. And this is also, if you ask me, the most important factor for successful business, trusting each other, finding someone you can trust and work with.
Yeah, I was thinking about should we talk about this? Should we bring up this scene? But I think since we talk about game theory, John Nash and Hollywood has put together this movie. I think it's worth talking about this bar scene because this is what's going on in reality at the end of the day. And I like the angle that you got to say, okay, because it's just clear for one side what the end result is, doesn't mean that the other side sees it the same way at the end of the day. And this clarifies the confusion quite quickly, and brings it and also ties it back then to reality in negotiating. Um, what's the best starting point, in your opinion, for a negotiation when we look through the game theory lens?
So there's one question I always ask in every negotiation workshop I give. Do you make the first offer or not? And this
Mhm.
is always a question people can discuss this for hours, because there are sometimes people say, when I enter a negotiation, I do the first offer, I anchor because I have, the control. So the background is, if you make the first offer, you do some anchoring around this number. If you say 10 millions, right? And then the others might negotiate around this number, but it will be close to 10 millions. It won't be just 1 million or a trillion or something. So you will be close to this number. So the first offer always has this anchoring effect. Nevertheless, if you ask people, are you making the first offer? Some say, I always do that. Others say, no, and you have to be careful. And so there is no, I would say, there is no unique approach to negotiations. There is no recipe, always do this first or always do that. It very much depends on, for example, the information you have. So there's nothing wrong with just entering the negotiation and asking questions. So it depends. Everyone hates this answer, I know.
Yeah. Yeah, I was hoping for a simplified concept that you can apply for all steps, but I have to agree, it's not easy. It's complicated. There is maybe some process steps, but at the end of the day, every human is different.
Every
And
human is different, and also the situations are different. You will never ever negotiate to the exact thing twice. It's always a bit different because you have other organizations, you have other molecules, and whatsoever.
yeah, I like this anecdote from I think 10 years ago, meanwhile of 15 years. That's way back, where a friend of mine went to a conference and I asked him afterward, how was it? And he said, useless, waste of time. And then I asked, why do you say it was a waste of time? I mean, he met a lot of people there, and he said, look, I went to this conference to close a financing deal and came home with no funding secured. So this was a mistake to go there in the first place. And it reminded me that the expectations are really important in negotiations, and to understand when does a negotiation start and what happens at the conference. What advice would you give my friend when he told you this story and say, look, I went to the conference and wanted to close a deal and I didn't close a deal there, so it was a waste of time. What would be your advice from your experience, academia, and negotiating with the big companies in Germany?
I think the problem only lies with your friend, right? It's all about expectation management. As you said, I wouldn't expect to close a deal just because you give a presentation. So how can you? So the first thing would be to lower the expectations to be happy with the outcome. So one thing, because being positive about the future is something, having a good mood and understanding that you achieved something else instead of closing the deal, and also let's say motivate you for the future, because what you usually do is when you present your company is investors get to know you and they might not close the deal. So here's the contract, they didn't never have the contract with them and sign the deal immediately, but they might contact you later, or you have the possibility to contact them later. So thinking about the situation and thinking about other options and how this can be seen. So did he talk to people after this presentation? Did he do that? So because this is one way to get to know investors, to see if there are still open questions to improve for the next presentation. So this is one thing, but also to build a relationship, to be more known among investors, and to see, maybe also to see for who it could be interesting, because not all it's not just one industry, but the companies have different focuses on, I don't know, oncology or something. And if it fits in their strategy, then it might be easier to collaborate with them. And if you didn't do your homework and, browsed all the web pages and looked for their strategies, you can learn after the presentation. So this is also a good opportunity.
What I liked with game theory when I learned about it in university is that it's simple. You have a defined outcome, and then you can put it into a mathematical rational model, and then you can calculate all different options. And I like the point that you gave me about negotiation as a leadership capability and not so much a theoretical concept. And then there is the real world. And what you said makes absolute sense, that you have to lower the expectations. There is a process to go through in a negotiation. And very often, I think people, myself included, make the mistake to try to play all moves right at the beginning and throw everything at the other person. How do you approach a negotiation? When you have to manage it entirely from the first idea to closing the deal, what are your core steps in that process?
So what you can plan is you can plan the time before the negotiation. You can plan the negotiation itself, and of course you can see how the follow-ups are done and how everything is implemented. So there are different phases, and for the preparation, I mean, it's so what can I say? Preparation means you have to know what you want, which means you need internal alignment in your company, which is already so difficult, isn't it?
Mm, mm.
So everyone thinking about their own negotiations now, having this internal alignment is so difficult. Maybe everyone is clear about what they want to achieve. Like we want a deal with company A. Okay, but what does it mean? And what are you willing to give away when you have to make concessions, for example? What is important for you? What milestones, for examples, or royalties? What is more important for you? So thinking about all the details of a deal and being aligned on how important what aspects are for you. This is so complicated.
Yeah.
If you're clear about that, then the negotiation is almost done, because then you have your recipe and you exactly know what you can bring in if the negotiation doesn't continue, come to a stop, and you have to continue somehow. Exactly know what you have to do, but if you don't have the internal alignment, it's so difficult.
Why is that important? Just a little bit background. I mean, when I talk to people that and bring up this point, then the immediate reaction is just go out into it. And we clarify it on the fly. And when a problem appears, then we talk about it. Why do you emphasize preparation as the most important part for success instead of just going out and doing it and finding out when you cross the bridge, how the bridge looks like and what you should do with that? Why is preparation key to success?
Oh, how can you know what you want if you are at the negotiation table and then discussing internally what is important for? Oh, wow, this is a lot. I wouldn't ask for so much. This is a lot, isn't it? Because you have to understand your own position, and then you also reveal that you are not speaking with one voice, which is maybe not a good sign, is it? So I'm thinking about, making a good impression, and so it's not helpful having different opinions on your side of the table, I would say, and it also might take too much time when you are not clear about how important the aspects are. You also maybe do not know the numbers behind it, and how can you compare different aspects if you don't know the numbers, I don't know, the revenue you get from this and that, and so you have to compare somehow. So being at the negotiation table is too late, because then you don't have time to get this information you need to be able to compare the different outcomes. So of course it happens from time to time that people experience of, there's something I don't know, and then you can decide if you go, oh no, you just say, okay, we continue the negotiation at another day. But yeah, so I wouldn't rely on that. That's a bit risky, isn't it? Just because. So why should you do that? Why do people say it's enough to clarify this at the negotiation table? Because they were lazy before the negotiation, or maybe they didn't think it through. So what happened? So why does it happen? So this would be one of the questions I would raise in order to make sure that these guys will perform better the next time.
Yeah, I think it ties back to what you said at the beginning, expectation management, and not having a structure um, to understand how a negotiation should be approached at the end of the day. Just thinking it will work by itself, but it doesn't really. So this is, I think, a key fact
Yeah,
of
and
reality.
And maybe one more comment. So when you think about negotiation, how to prepare, you can also think about influencing techniques and steps you can make. And there's something more, because if you do that, also the other side might try to influence you. And if you have time enough and have open mind, to observe that they are trying to influence you, you might also benefit from having thought about techniques how to to answer those influencing approaches, so to say.
How do you bring these two worlds together? On one hand, I always perceived game theory as rationalizing a decision and having a mathematical framework. But I missed always a little bit the psychological part. And then you have the negotiation process, the psychological part. How do you match these two worlds in your model?
Yeah, so once again, it's the question theory and being rational, and the real life negotiations with people, emotions, and everything else, which is much more complicated. For me, it's just the same. Okay, so and I can tell you why. So if you look at very simple theory, it's only about prices that influence decisions, maybe quality. So some variables, but very few to be able to, theory. This is what students and everyone learned at university. But in real life, you can incorporate other aspects as well. You can say that this outcome is more important because people feel guilty, they have certain kinds of emotions because it's important. So one example I have for you is I was involved in a negotiation with two companies, and one side didn't know how important the outcome or the collaboration was for the other side. And the other side thought it's important because they had a case of in their family, the child was ill and suffered from this disease. So it was very important for the father to collaborate to make sure that something will be found to fight this disease. And the other side didn't know about this, let's say, irrational emotion, isn't it? It's not what people think is rational. But if you ask me, I would say it's totally rational that he is so interested in this collaboration, because it's something he desperately wants. So it is rational to behave according to your own preferences, even though it's not just price and quality, but there are other aspects as well. And so game theory does not only, in simple cases are based on variables like prices and so, but you can include all other aspects as well. And that's now a bit complicated, okay? Because you have to find, let's say, a value. How important is this outcome for this guy? So you have to think about that. But sometimes it's just enough to think, okay, so if we offer this and we get this deal done, okay, so can we offer less, or also how much important is this? Does this aspect change something? Do we still get a deal if we lower something, or let's say define the negotiation variables a bit differently? So you can just think about what does it change if you're not able to quantify it or something. So does it make sense? So to me, it's not a difference whether you look at rational or irrational variables. You can incorporate everything in your thinking.
How do you make a difference between rational and irrational variables?
Well, the rational ones are easier to quantify because it's prices and quality, and you know what people are willing to pay for something or so, and you know the market size. So that's much easier. And all you have to do is maybe to calculate the net expected value, so that's easy because it's just math, easy math. But if you incorporate feelings, emotions, something that is considered to be more irrational, so how would you quantify it? Or when does it change the decision of the counterpart? So that's the question. And that's not so easy. How can you get more clarity on that? Ask them and talk to each other. Make sure that you go for dinner together and you drink a glass of wine and talk about whatever you want to talk about. Because at this occasion, the other guy might say, so my son suffers from this disease, so it's very important for me. And then you get more information, right? So try to engage in relationship building and use the time before the explicit negotiation to exchange information and to become a team, to collaborate on that.
So to understand this right, your recommendation is to separate relationship building from the negotiation and not start the relationship building during the first negotiation.
Oh no, do it everything together. I strongly recommend to have a glass of wine together. So that's the bottom line, yeah.
Yeah. When you look at decision making and we come from game theory, mathematical concept over the negotiation process to the point of making the final decision at the end of the day. Did you ever spend some time pondering when we go back to this rational and irrational variables in a decision process? Uh, which part drives decisions more, in your opinion, the rational or the irrational variables?
It so once again, it depends. So we humans try to or tend to react on the emotional side first. Maybe you know the book by Kahneman, and he got a Nobel Prize for this as well. So thinking fast and slow. So the fast response is the system one thinking where you respond on an emotional level. So something like I like you, you feel it feels nice. And then you think about the next step would be to think system two thinking, oh, he wants something from me, right? He doesn't just say it. There's something behind that. So it's always you have this emotional reaction, and then if you have more time to think this through, you use the trained behavior and the trained concepts and to come to a conclusion which is more rational. And I think this is true for every interactions you have, but some people are more trained in overcoming those emotional challenges and directly get into the system two thinking. So so once again, it depends. But if you want to make a good decision, the emotional ones are not the best decisions because it gives you immediate satisfaction, but that's it. If you want to plan for more sustainable outcomes, of course, you need to get over this and use your system two thinking to get some better outcomes.
And that's basically leadership mastery. At the end of the day, this is what leadership about, in my opinion, to control your reactions at the beginning and not react and decide from the first reaction, but really take your time and look into it. And what I found interesting when I look at YouTube these days, there are two thinkers that put out a lot of content about negotiation processes, and especially navigating human minds and emotions. It's Chris Voss and Chase Hughes. Have you ever looked into their work?
There are lots of people doing negotiations and giving recommendations. A lot of them are based in the US, by the way. Chris Voss is Chris Voss is an ex-FBI hostage negotiator, and when he talks about negotiations, he has a very specific situation. So it's about hostages. He doesn't have much time. In order to save people's life, what he typically does is he tries to partner and make sure that there's a good outcome and nobody will die or suffer from the hostage. So I find it interesting to, because so in his former life, in those kind of situations, if there's not much time, you can do a lot on the emotional level, and that's perfectly fine because you don't have the time to think it through, right? And what you can learn from this guy is that how to address emotions and how to react to those. Which is quite interesting. Who was the other guy you mentioned?
Chase Hughes.
Chase Hughes. He is more on the behavioral side, if I remember this correctly, but also someone who talks about emotions. Actually, there's a lot of literature and a lot of people giving advice on negotiations. What I typically do is I browse their books and videos and whatsoever. And I use what is helpful for myself. Very often they talk about the same things, but describing it with their own words might sound as if they are talking about different things. Very often it's not. The approaches are often similar. So also, for example, there is a lot of literature coming from Harvard because they have a negotiation unit at Harvard, and they publish a lot and give webinars, and well, a few people do that.
When we look at negotiations today, I think before 2020, the world was more, maybe before 1990, the world was more local. Then we got the internet and the world became really global then. But still, people, especially in B2B, usually met in the real world when they negotiated. And 2020 changed the dynamic. Now we are on Zoom. I mean, for our recording, it's a Zoom call, basically. So what you can do easily is connect with people globally on social media, LinkedIn, get them on a call, and start basically the process. And we don't meet in real life for a very long time. Have you ever thought about the situation, how this influences negotiation dynamics?
Oh, everyone has to, right? Because we meet online, we don't meet in person anymore. But you know, I'm so old-fashioned. I love to meet people in person. I find it much easier to negotiate when you can see each other and you can interpret the body language. It's much more difficult when you see just the face on Zoom. So how can you? I think it's more complicated. You meet each other at a lower cost. You don't have to travel. You are in your country. You don't have to, you know, get to the airport, come to a different culture, eat Chinese noodles, you don't like them, you know. So everything is, it's easier to approach other people. So maybe you do this more often then as a consequence because it's so easy. But what is the value you get out of it? And are you really able to close good deals? So, I find it difficult. I think a lot of people still travel for important negotiations, but nevertheless, it means that all the relationship building before happens very often online. So again, even if the real negotiation happens face to face, very often the pre-meetings are online. And well, for myself, I can only say I try to understand what I need to make it a success for me. So if I cannot read someone's mind, I can think about questions, how to get the information I need, how to get closer to the people somewhere in the world. That yeah, so I can imagine that some people are still old-fashioned and love to travel for those meetings. What would you say?
I think the world changed. Um, Thinking back before 2020, it was getting someone motivated via a LinkedIn contact to enter a negotiation. I think the chance was very slim to negotiation. I would say is for me in that picture to work towards a mutual outcome, whatever it is. Can be a webinar, can be a Zoom call, can be closing a deal, can be an acquisition, but having something in mind to enter a collaboration that leads to something. Before 2020, I think LinkedIn, sometimes it was really hostile. Why should I accept your invitation when I don't know you in real life? It was, I think, 2013, 2014-ish around. Facebook, especially in Canada, was seen as private space, and it was really felt for some people as an intrusion in Canada to contact them on Facebook without a prior meeting in real life. When I now look at the dynamic in 2026, not 2025 anymore, so 2026, it's pretty much the norm that I contacted you first on LinkedIn and we had a conversation on Zoom. We didn't meet in real life before. And now we're at a webinar. So I would say it was successful. So we are working towards an outcome. Would that have happened 10 years ago? I'm not so sure. It was a different world back then, and now people just use the tools. the interactions. And when I think about the time in the pandemic, 2020, 2021, my worst fear was that we don't close any deals during the lockdowns. But reality shows, and the data shows that it was completely different. People closed deals without meeting in real life, and not small deals, not buying a book from Amazon. They invested millions in companies run by people they never met before in real life. So this changed. It's just a different world. If it's good or bad, I don't know. I don't know.
I would like to have some more evidence on that. I'm not sure if I can trust you on this. No, I mean, there must be something to it. When you're saying that deals are closed with people who do not know each other, does it mean they never met each other? Because there was a life before COVID, and maybe they met before COVID and we still benefit from those past meetings in person. So that could be one of the reasons. So still, I'm not sure if I can trust this if you say that people close deals without having seen each other. Maybe they do, but maybe it's not the majority of deals. I don't know. I can only accept what you're saying. I think when you approach people via platforms like LinkedIn, there's a positive side because you can approach everyone in the world, but there's also the downside that you get a lot of messages on LinkedIn. So you have to, if you're interested in answering some of them, you have to get through them and see this is important, this is not so important. So it also increases cost somehow. So you have a bigger chance of meeting someone or doing something you weren't able before, but you also have a higher cost because you have to deal with all those messages and so. Well, nevertheless, we can't choose, right? The world has changed and we can just accept how it is. But nevertheless, if you have the feeling that you want to meet someone in person, why not just ask or fly over to see this guy? So if it's important, right, you might do this still. So as I said, Christian, when I'm in Vienna, I will give you a call and I will come and stop by and we will have a coffee together. So because this is still on my to-do list to meet people in person. I think it's a kind of compliment and it's just something that gives me pleasure meeting people in person. So yeah, so why not do this if it's important?
Yeah, looking at the data definitely makes sense, and figuring out how these deals worked out at the end of the day. But looking back to the time in 2020 to 2022 with the lockdowns, I think it was a necessity for funds to just close deals to allocate the capital. In that reality now with people they never met, what I wanted to emphasize is they never met in real life before. So they just met online. And it seems that Zoom and social media closes a gap in building trust. This is what I find particularly interesting, that the calls and evidence on social media starts helping building trust, which was, in my opinion, not there before 2020. And this trust building process is something that's shifting currently. How do you see that?
Yeah, I must say I agree. And finally, everyone has to answer the question for themselves if it's enough to close a deal or not. But of course, it helps. Well, it's interesting to see how people behave in meetings. So if you have meetings with bigger groups, some don't switch on the camera, and even if you ask them to do so, so it very much depends on the context. So I have to be careful, right? But sometimes in companies, everyone turns on the camera. In other companies, they don't, and they do something else instead. Even if you ask them to comment on something, they don't listen. So, and yeah, so if you want to build trust and build a relationship, of course, you have to make sure that everyone in the meeting, is on the same page. So again, it's about internal alignment and how you present your company. But yeah, it might help. It might help.
I mean, if we go back to the framing of this episode, it's about achieving win-win outcomes, negotiations, and influencing people at the end of the day. And when I think now the next layer, artificial intelligence and social media, looking at politics, for example, I mean, I know politics is always a difficult thing to bring up, but um, thinking back to the 90s or early 2000s, politics happened in closed rooms at the end of the day. So it was politicians meeting with their trusted advisors in real life to achieve an outcome. And now it's all on social media. So I think this trust building and influencing is completely shifting over the decades. And the next level is artificial intelligence. Looking at the podcast, my preparation process that includes also guest profiles. I started asking people at conferences how they approach this trust building phase. So before they meet the person. And also this 10 years ago, the first meeting was the first impression and the first contact. And the other person, like you or I, had a chance to express who we are. And when I ask now, how do you approach the process of meeting a person at the conference? Almost everybody says, well, I see an interesting person in the conference system, and then I go on social media, and then I go on Google search, and then I want to have information, and then I decide whether I want to see this person. How do you see these new dynamics, artificial intelligence, social media, shifting negotiations?
Well, so I'm happy that you got the right information about myself using AI. So this is just a side comment because
Mhm.
I realized when I plug in my name, there's also a singer with my name. And I also got wrong information that I did a project somewhere in Germany with another university. No, it wasn't me. So, but nevertheless, AI is improving. So I think it's getting better. So, but what happens is that you have to do more. So you have to gather information about people. In the past, you just went to the meeting and asked. So you have to do more. And I think so. Use AI to the extent that it helps you. Don't get lost. This is something that happens quite often, I would say. When you plug in something to one of the AIs available, you get the next question. You want to know this as well, that as well. So, yeah, so if you are very clear about what you want to achieve and what you want to know, it's helpful for you, but sometimes you might get lost. And also, of course, it might help in preparing for the negotiation, not only in gathering information about people you meet.
Isn't that a risk at the end of the day? I like this angle that you bring in, that people form a perception about another person and an outcome before they even meet the person. So they start maybe they run. I mean, it feels sometimes like you know this person. Let's stay with politics. Donald Trump. I think everybody now knows Donald Trump. He's all over social media, and they have a certain picture about this person. And when they meet them, they enter the negotiation with this prepared picture. This can be real, it cannot be real. You brought up the example with your personality, that there are other people with your name and that they have different careers. So if I solely rely on LLMs and say, okay, this is my picture of you, then I start the conversation negotiation with you with a prepared picture. How do you see this dynamic?
I think there's a risk associated with that. So just gathering information is perfectly fine, as much as you want, as much as it is helpful for you. But if it has the effect that it gives you a certain position towards this person or this organization, it might stand in your way. For example, if I gather information about Trump and read about what he does to the world, I might come to the conclusion, I'm not saying I do so, by the way, it's just an example, I might come to the conclusion that I don't like him. So when I negotiate with him and I meet him for the first time in person, I might have this feeling I don't like him. So, which means that I might not smile, I might not be friendly, and I might influence the meeting and the negotiation into the wrong direction. Then I would say be careful and try to manage your own emotions. Get over this once again, because it only matters to you. It doesn't matter to him. It doesn't matter to the negotiation, but it matters to you only. And who cares about your feelings, to be honest? It's about the project or the deal or whatever. It's not about your feelings. So in that sense, it can be counterproductive, but nevertheless, if you know about this and are able to manage your emotions, then why not?
It's an interesting point. Maybe stay a little bit longer here. Um, I mean, you're right. 20 years ago, when the cost of information was extremely high. So when I wanted to know who is Stefanie Schubert, I had to ask around. There was nothing. Or 30 years ago, there was nothing on the internet. So this was really empty, and it was rare that someone had a social media profile. I think in 2008, HR consultants still said, never go on social media. It will ruin your career at the end of the day. But there was no information. The only way to find out something about you was asking friends. And this was a costly process. Picking up the phone, calling someone, getting information, meeting someone by chance, remembering you. And the larger the distance, or with conferences, global conferences like Bio International, the chance of having an overlapping circle was really rare. And it was not really very common. The cost of information was high. Now it feels like I can fall down a rabbit hole. I can Google you, I can research you, I can look into your social media profiles, I can look in past presentations of you. So I get this image built up in my mind. And as you said, start having feelings, can be good, can be negative, but it gives me the comfortable feeling of I know you. But in reality, when we meet for the first time, I don't know anything about you. And we never met each other. Um, how should we approach that in a negotiation? What is the right angle to gather data before the first meeting or after the first meeting?
As I always love to be prepared. So I would always prepare as much as
Mhm.
I need for myself to be comfortable entering the negotiation table. So this is one thing. But of course, it makes sense to clarify whether this information is correct or not. So be open to a situation where it turns out that the information you got isn't true, or it doesn't. Maybe it's not important for the deal or something. So if you are too sure about what you have and what you learned about this organization, and it might not be helpful if you're wrong. So why not being prepared? So once again, it's there is this unconscious pressure that you always need to gather information about everything. But I don't know, my brain is limited. I can't do that. So I try to get into this, try to get a feeling, try to be prepared for what I need to know. But also, you meet via Zoom, LinkedIn, via, I don't know, in person, the old fashioned way, maybe. So why not also use this time to get to know each other? So it's okay, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. People, I think, should do that. Thinking about the old-fashioned way, this is another movie, The Last Samurai. I think it was is a good example in the movie when it was. Have you seen the movie, The Last Samurai?
No.
This was it's basically I think 1800 something. Tom Cruise plays a US soldier traveling to Japan to fight against the samurai. It was the time when the samurai class was vanishing from Japan. So this was were the last battles, and he was caught and brought to the chief of the tribe after he was caught and taken hostage. And Tom Cruise, the Westerner, it was really well depicted in this scene, this cultural difference. The Westerner went into the room where the uh, chief of this tribe was meditating and started bombarding him with questions, one after the other, staccato of questions, really high pressure, fast. And the samurai chief, the Japanese guy, just sat there and listens and did nothing. And then got up and said, "What's your name?" And Tom Cruise said his name, and the chief of the tribe introduced himself to Tom Cruise. And Tom Cruise continued asking question after other question, answer this, answer this, answer that. And the chief looked at him, smiled, and said, "I know your name, you know my name. That's enough for today." And I like this scene because it exemplifies this closing deal fast, like John Nash. It's like speeding up the process and not taking time for a trust building phase. What's your recommendation for a trust building phase? How serious should take people these days, this phase, and how much time should they take for that?
How much time should you take for the relationship building phase?
Mm.
So, in the life science industry, those are typically very long projects, which means if you close a deal, you will be working together for quite a long time. Even if it's not, even if business development closes the deals and alliance management works on the project, it's still the same company. So, you want to have a good relationship somehow. And it might not only be this one deal, but other deals might follow. You never know, because if you have a certain reputation as the partner of choice, this only helps you in the future. So, how much time? I think there is one thing is being active and asking for meetings and asking for activities to do together, having lunch and dinner and drinking a glass of wine. But also the other side might approach you and ask you and invite you. And I think this is something that happens very, very, very without, you don't have to think much about that, do you?
No, normally not. When I look at the professional deal processes, sometimes I think it makes sense to talk a little bit more about this phase, because for me it feels that when people approach me, they come with a clear outcome expectation. So let's say we're financing, closing a financing round, and say, okay, I need 10 million euros on my bank account in 3 weeks. Go for it. Uh, So 3 weeks, there is not much time to build trust, and this leads back to the expectation time. Is it normal? Should it be normal? Should it be understood? I think yes, but especially what I find interesting in the industry when it comes to financing, it often feels to me that in that particular part of the business model story, it doesn't seem to be understood well. How do you see this part of dynamics?
Yeah, so relationship building is not just to find out if we like each other. It's about, let's say, exchanging information as well. And maybe for one company, it's important to close the deal in 2025, December, right? And the other company wants to close the deal in January. So those things have to be clarified, and you have to talk about that. If you don't exchange information in this informal level, if you don't get a feeling of what is important for others. So how can you then prepare for the negotiation? I find it difficult. So in finance, it's just part of the deal. It's just the side that can be quantified, but it's still part of the deal. So of course, prepare and get to know each other.
Yeah, when we talk about decision, it's part of decision myths, especially when it comes to startups, startup financing, startup funding. What I find interesting is that one recurring theme is the expectation of a fast closing deal in funding rounds, which is not the reality. And there is one point that also pops up frequently where people say, look, I reached out to this investor and we had a good meeting. And then they said, it's not for us. Do they ever talk to this person again? And it comes back to trust building and relationship buildings at the end of the day. A rejection does not necessarily mean that it might be the end of the negotiation. It's part of a negotiation. How do you see rejections in B2B processes, in negotiations?
Um, so yes, I would agree that a rejection is not necessarily the end of the story, because maybe the products changed or maybe the timeline changed, and that might change the decision of the investor. And also maybe you improve your, let's say, your, well, how can I say that? How you transport the story of your product so that it's more easily understood by the investor. This is another point. So looking at startups or scientists at bio, they are very convinced of their innovations and what they have, the great molecule, and they go so much into detail, academic details about efficacy and things like that. And But nevertheless, the investor is someone who wants to invest to make some money, right? So this is his interest. So there are two different peoples talking to each other, and if the scientist or the startup is not able to speak the language of the investor, it's more difficult. But this is a process. Just because you invent something new, you create an app or a great molecule, it doesn't mean that you have these abilities to talk to an investor in his language, right? But so why not just keep on improving that, and then maybe the rejection turns into a yes, maybe, who knows, and you can start an informal negotiation before you close the deal formally.
Can we, at the end of our conversation, can we play this through? Let's assume I'm working with you and I would ask you to support my company in a negotiation process. We start early. I contact you before I even aligned with the stakeholders in the company and say, look, I mean, my company needs, let's say $100 million on the bank account in a year. And I want you to be part of my team and guide me through the negotiation process so that next year, January 2027, we have $100 million on the bank account. How would you approach this situation? So when people think about working with you, how would you go for it?
Well, if you start really early in the negotiation process, it means you have to find a good potential partner. This is the first step, and see what the strategy of potential partners are, if it aligns with what you have on the table. And then see how to approach them and how to, if you are able to speak the right language, and set up some ideas for the negotiations. So being clear about what you want to achieve, how important those different aspects are, how important is it to have cash, royalties, how to set up a contract. For me, I think it's always helpful to guide the people towards a value creation and thinking about how can you create value together with a partner. So what do you bring and what does the partner bring, and what is the most you can get out of that? So this is one step. But what next step would be how to distribute the value. I know it's not done like this in reality, but my opinion is that if two companies work together, they both contribute equally to the success of the project. So basically, they could benefit 50 on a 50-50 basis. So I know this is not done in reality. So because companies think about this differently, they say big pharma invests a lot and they bring in more resources, so they get 80%, and the biotech only gets 20%. So you can think about this in a different way and say they all contribute to the value, and now we take into account all the resources, the different companies bring in, and what is left will be shared 50-50. This is just a reframing of the problem. But if you do it like that, you can see that both companies are equally important and both contribute. Let's say, they co-create the value together. And that gives you a different mindset and motivates you to be successful. But when thinking about planning of the negotiation, so you can separate the value creation process from the distribution process if big pharma lets you. It's difficult, but you can have meetings where you discuss the value you want to generate together and how you're going to do that in one meeting, and then the negotiation how to distribute value in the next meeting, and then just going through all the steps. And this is very individual and very tailored, because what companies bring in and what you can achieve is always very, very individual. And then preparing step by step and make a good deal in the end.
Yeah, good point, especially the preparation. I think this is something that needs a lot more emphasis before going out on the market to really understand what do you want at the end of the day, defining success.
Defining success and also being confident about yourself. So because you bring in something, it's not that you beg for money with the investor or you ask big pharma, please, can you buy my? So you bring in some value for them as well. So you can be confident, and it should be a good deal for both of you.
And describing that is not easy, in my opinion. it sounds easy. I mean, with this 100 million example, I want a pharma partner, and the pharma partner should transfer 100 million on my bank account because at the end of the day, we need it for the next 2 years, full stop. But is the value then really described and what success is and how a collaboration looks like
Yeah,
with
and
just
so
this
why not,
information?
yeah, why not define what is success for you? So does it, for example, help the big pharma company in in their strategy? As I said earlier, if the strategy is to have to fill the pipeline in oncology, for example, and you have exactly that, so it helps them a lot. So think about the why it helps them, and yeah, so that's a bit of work as well.
Stephanie, great conversation. I love the way you think, and we took a lot of steps from ballroom dancing over game theory, John Nash, Hollywood, cinema. Is there any topic that we should talk about in the podcast before we wrap it up?
Um, Hmm. So are we still? Do we still have? No, just
No, we have
we can still talk for hours. I have the feeling that we could
let's
cover a
go.
lot more.
I have
So we talked
nothing.
about.
It's a bank holiday in Austria, so I have nothing afterward. We can talk until 6 p.m.
No, I'm just kidding. Totally understand. And so we have been talking for 2 hours now about very different things, how to influence people, about emotions, about rational aspects. So I would say if there's anyone who'd like to know more, just contact us, and we have to then maybe think about a follow up for this podcast. But no, I think I'm happy with your questions and what we talked about. Thank you
Yeah,
so
me
much.
too. Me too. Me too. Thank you for being on the show. Then my final question to you, how can people reach out to you? What's the best way to get in contact with you?
Um, Maybe just write via LinkedIn. So I'm one of the guys who reads the LinkedIn messages regularly. So please feel free to reach out. And then we can see if we can do something together. Thank you so much, Christian.
Super. Thank you, Stephanie, for being on the show. Let's stay in touch and catch up soon.
Thank you so much. Wish you a wonderful rest of the day.
Thank you. Have a great day. Bye bye.
Bye.